Hi everyone, it's Clive. Welcome to my home brewing video. It's been a little while. I think it's a bit of an annual excursion for me now, but you can see I've got a beer kit ready. I had my boilers packed up a while ago, so I think I'm going to stick with kits, but let's see how we get on with this one. Cheers. So what we have here is the St Peter's Brewery India Pale Ale, and this says it makes 32 pints. And you don't get a lot on these things. You get a bit of blurb on the back, you get some instructions. What you do get are a couple of cans of concentrates, and what you're meant to do is then warm these up. So basically I filled up this washing up bowl with hot water and it's been soaking for a little while. You also get a couple of sachets, you've got some yeast, and you've got some what looks like some yeast dextrin. I'm probably going to swap the yeast for maybe something like a Mangrove Jacks M66 yeast, so let's see how I get on. As usual when I'm brewing, I make notes and I use little notebooks. You can see that I had a little bit of a stock take recently just to see what stuff I've got in malt, etc. So always a good idea because you can always look back through your notes to see how you got on the last time. As always, I'm using these Milton sterilising tablets, and I'm using a couple of these fermentation bins, and I pop a tablet in each one. And as I always say, if it's good enough for babies, it's good enough for beer. This is the second fermenter, and I just, like I said, I popped a tablet in there and I've topped it right up, put the lid on, so that will help sterilise the underside of the lid as well. Just one thing to mention, when I was looking at buying a beer kit, I was looking around, I could see there are, you know, various places you can buy kits. This one had 2 containers in it, so it had these 2 containers. Some only have 1 container and they're cheaper. So this was 24 quid. And others might be 17, 18, but if you read the instructions, it says you've got to add a kilo of brewing sugar. Well, that's going to set you back another 5 or 6 quid. So it really wasn't much difference. I thought, well, I might as well get this one then. I've got these brewing sugars. In fact, you can see that's a Wilco's one. That's a defunct brand now. But I've got that for the future. So watch out for that when you're buying a kit. Just read the instructions to see what additional things you need to get. Sometimes it's not all in. You want to look for a kit where pretty much everything's in the kit. Not only am I sterilising the fermentation bins, I'm also sterilising the spoon, the airlock, the bung, the can opener, the thermometer, the measuring cylinders. I've also just set this boiled water to cool. This will be for the yeast when I actually pitch the yeast, because I want to hydrate the yeast later. Here we go. This is the first can, and you can see, let's try to show you what this stuff looks like. Pretty gloopy stuff, and quite a lot of it will stay in the can, so I'm going to get some boiled water and sluice out these cans when I do it as well. Look at that, like treacle. This is the sugar when you do the full grain mash brewing process. This is essentially the sort of equivalent of the sugar that you get from the grain. It's just been concentrated into cans. Here we go, this is can number 2. Here you go, I'll give you a good look at the instructions so you can read where we're at. And what I'm doing now is I'm boiling some water. I'm going to add that to the fermentation bin. I'm going to top it up with cold water and then move on to adding the yeast. And that won't be far off now. I'm also going to add a crushed Camden tablet, and what this is sodium metabisulfite. You can see the tablet is all crushed up in there, and this counteracts any chlorine in the water, otherwise you can get a funny taste when using tap water. Don't underestimate how sticky this malt extract is. It seems to get everywhere as well. It's horrible stuff. And I mean, I'm trying to wash my hands, it still seems to be there. What I'm doing now, I've added the boiled water. I'm actually using these cans to transfer the cold water. A bit laborious, but my theory goes there's a little bit of sugar still left in these cans, so it might wash out a little bit more. The more sugar, the better. The more alcohol, essentially. There you go, that's the fermenter filled up. You can see on, can you see? Maybe not. But it's just about lighting up the 30 on here. So that's at the cusp of what you want. You want it to be a bit cooler than that. One thing you've got to do as well is, I don't know if you can see it, you can actually see this, the extract here, the malt extract still at the bottom. So I have to give this a good old stir. Let's see how we're doing, because I've got a feeling it's still probably quite gloopy. Oh, look at that, can you see that all needs stirring in. It's no good being at the bottom, it needs to be distributed throughout what is the bitter wort. So let me give that a good old stir. There you go. That need to get to the point where there's no gloopy stuff coming off the spoon. Okay, that water's now less than 30, so I'm going to add the Mangrove Jacks yeast, and you can see the dried yeast in there, and you just tip it in. And I'll give that a good stir, and then that should hydrate. We'll come back to that in a bit. Next, I'm going to add this Golding's hop powder, which says it contains maltodextrin, which is basically brewing sugar, I think, and hop oil, so you can smell the hops in that. So I'm just going to tip that in. I'll give that a good stir as well. There you go, that's a 100ml sample of the bitter wort. I'm going to use the hydrometer on that just to check the original gravity of the bitter wort. There you go, that's the yeast hydrated. I'm just going to pitch this into the bitter wort. There you go. Now I just need to seal it up and top up the airlock, and I'll leave that for about 4 or 5 days, 6 days, maybe a week, for the first stage of primary fermentation. You can see how much water I put into the airlock. One thing to stress is make sure that the lid is completely sealed. Sometimes it can be a little bit hard to press on. They've got to click into place, otherwise you won't get any sort of like bubbling. Some of the CO2 evolved from the conversion of the sugar to alcohol, but will sort of escape through the seal here. Sometimes I've had to seal this up with a bit of tape or something, but you'll know because this sort of thing will start bubbling. If it doesn't start bubbling, you've probably got an air leak somewhere. There you go. So it's about 6 days after I put the bitter wort in with the yeast to ferment. It's still bubbling a little bit, and I'm going to add some Citra as a dry hopping, and you can see the Citra's in, it's like a tea bag. So I just bought some water, and I'm going to steep this in water just to ensure that the whole thing is, I suppose, sterilised, I suppose, but also it sort of infuses in the water as well. And I just basically leave that for 10 minutes, and then I'll pour that into the primary fermenter down there. So here we are. We're about 9 days since we put the beer into the fermenter, and I popped in the dry hops the other day. Now I'm ready to be bottling up, and I've got 42 bottles here. I won't be filling all of these, I suspect. Always good to have a few spares. I've got a whole bunch of bits and bobs and caps and things. Sterilising, got some extra sterilising stuff, so I'm going to be rinsing out these because these have been sterilising with sterilising solution, so I'm going to rinse them out, and then I'll put that sterilising solution in there, and then I'll start bottling up. In order to kickstart the second fermentation when the beer's in the bottles, you add a little bit of sugar. So I've got 100 grams of this malt sugar. I'm going to add some water, and then I'm going to add it as a solution to each of the bottles. So I've got a little syringe and about 10 mils of the sugary solution, and that basically then reactivates the yeast, and you get a secondary fermentation, and that secondary fermentation then carbonates the beer in the bottle, so you get a nice fizzy beer when it comes out, when it's ready in about 3 or 4 weeks time. So this is a sugary solution. I'll literally just add 10 mils to every bottle. And do it with one hand. There you go, and let's just prime it. So now these bottles are primed, I'm going to siphon the beer using this magic wand here with a little button at the end, and that basically will fill up each of the bottles. So I'm going to crack on with that. Okay, you can see the siphoning in progress, and you can see the bottle filling up. So I'll leave a gap at the top, so I'll have to put this down in a minute. So I've got a bit of a system going here. So I'm basically filling and just hopping from one bottle to the next, and I'll hopefully get through quite a few. Hopefully, I'm aiming for at least 40 bottles. If you look at the end of this magic bottling one, you can see there's a sort of little bit that's sticking out at the end. When that's popped into the bottle, that sort of is depressed up, and that then releases the beer. It's pretty clever. Okay, I got 38 beers out of that. A couple of cloudy ones there. I might just cap them up and see what happens to them anyway. So here we go. This is my crown capper, and I've got a whole bunch of caps in here. So I'm just going to pop those on. There we go, 38 bottles of what I've described as all kinds of wonderful IPA. It's a Citra thing, so it's a Sanskrit definition of Citra, which includes the word wonderful. So I thought, oh, that sounds good. One nice thing, now the beers are all bottled and labelled, I've stuck them in boxes and I'm going to put them in understairs cupboard, the dark recess, right at the back down there. It'll be nice and dark, and they'll sit there for about 3 or 4 weeks before they're ready. That's it for the video, everyone. Cheers, happy brewing.